Welcome to Saturday Night Live at Ascent of Tzfat, Yisrael. The following story was told by Yerachmiel Tilles, one of the founders of Ascent and director of KabbalahOnline.org. It was recorded live at the traditional Melave Malka Mill by Simchat Chayirski.
In 1923, Lag BaOmer came on a Friday, Erev Shabbat. I'll tell you, I had the idea this year because it was Friday to go in the afternoon. So I got there about 3 o'clock. It wasn't at all busy. The music was just stopping. All the charity collectors were gone. It was quiet up and down the hill. So there wasn't so much the festival atmosphere, but it was possible to get in right next to Rabbi Shimon's kever. Only took 15 minutes from going in the doors to get up next to the kever. A small miracle. Anyway, so why did I bring this up? So we see that on Fridays, especially Fridays in the afternoon, there's not so many people in Meron. Why? Because of the problem of Shabbat. There's a limit to how many people can be there for Shabbat, and most people prefer to be home for Shabbat, so they leave. So this year, 1923, Lag BaOmer also fell on Erev Shabbat, and by the evening, the only people there were the people that were staying for Shabbat. Of course, Shabbat after Lag BaOmer is very special. It's not your ordinary Shabbat, but can imagine Shabbat in Meron. It's even more special. It's hard to get more special than that. Shabbat in Meron following Lag BaOmer, extending Lag BaOmer. So it was a very elevated atmosphere and a very happy time. From every direction and every place you could hear people singing the Lag BaOmer songs and the Shabbos songs. Everybody was having a wonderful time. That is at night, on Shabbat night, so everybody davens at the same time. Everybody goes to eat at the same time. Shabbat day was a little different. Early in the morning came the Sfardim, and after them came the Ashkenazim, the Litaim, to make sure they davened early enough to be able to say Shema at the right time and Tefillah at the right time. After them came the Hasidim, davening even later. And if there were Lubavitchers there, so then we know there was another minyan after the other Hasidim also. But by noontime, everybody was already involved in their meals. And again, it was a happy time singing the Shabbat songs and Lag BaOmer songs, when all of a sudden they heard a scream from inside the building. And people went running, and it was worse than anything you can imagine. A small boy had keeled over and died, just like that. What do I mean, small boy? One of the boys that they had brought for his haircut, one of the 3-year-old boys. So the greatest of joys turned to the saddest of tragedies instantly. What's more, when the word spread that a child had died, the British guards, because at that time Eretz Israel was under the government of the British, from the mandate of the League of Nations, called it the Mandate Time. So the British guards at Meron locked the gates. They said, a child died, maybe it's a plague. Maybe there'll be an epidemic. We have to isolate everybody inside. And they locked the gates, wouldn't let anybody out, wouldn't let anybody in. Families were split up, husbands and wives were separated, children and parents were separated, and nobody knew what to do. What could they do? But when it became clear that they weren't going to be able to leave right away, and nobody else was going to came in, so everybody that was there retreated inside. And people were crowded around the tombs, the tomb markers of Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Elazar. And all of a sudden, there was the splitting of the sea. Who had caused it? What had happened? People looked up, and there was the mother carrying her dead child in her arms. She walked up to the tomb of Rabbi Shimon, said, Adonenu Bar Yochai, 4 years ago on Lag BaOmer, I came here. My husband and I had been many years married. We never had a son. We prayed for a son. I made a vow that if we would have a son, that I would bring him here for his first haircut. And that's what happened. Our prayers were answered in the merit of Adonenu Bar Yochai. Within the year, we had a son. Now he became 3 years old. We waited until Lag BaOmer to give him his first haircut. I brought him here, and this happened. How can this be? And she said, Adonenu Bar Yochai, please help us, pray for us, give me back my son. And she put the son wrapped in a blanket, down next to the tomb, and she walked out. So, stunned silence, of course. And what's everybody going to do? Nobody felt comfortable being there with the dead baby when the mother walked out, so everybody else walked out also. The last person out closed the doors. Everybody was in the courtyard, and then a few minutes later they heard the sound of a child crying. They opened the door and they heard the child saying, "Ima, Ima, I'm thirsty." And went running in, and there was the child sitting up. It's a very great miracle. People said the blessing, blessed are you, God, who brings the dead to life. It was a blessing you don't get to say very often, you would think, although technically you can say this blessing when you see a friend that you haven't seen in over a year. But they said here it was the real thing, and then the situation reversed from the worst of tragedies to the highest of joys. I know this story is true from two directions, two sources. One is written in a book by one of the great Kabbalists of that generation, Rabbi Asher Zelek Margolis, who says he was there. And I myself, when I first heard the story, when I came to Israel in the 70s, I asked around, and there were people living in Tzfat then who had been there as children, or not even children, old people that had been there as young adults, or people whose parents had been there. And there's probably still people in Tzfat whose parents were there. So this is indisputably a true story.